Four-time All-Big Ten cornerback Jovon Johnson joins the show this week to talk about his thoughts on the 2021 edition of the Iowa Hawkeye football team, including the defensive backs. What were his thoughts after watching in person at the final spring practice just weeks ago? Also, we asked Jovon about his experience at Iowa. What were his reactions to what happened this past summer, some of the allegations that were thrown against Kirk Ferentz and Chris Doyle, and what was his personal experience like in Iowa City? All that and much more with Jovon Johnson during week 163 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is From the Hawkeye of the Storm.
Are you a Hawkeye fan living in Story County? Do you feel isolated, like you're alone in a maze of red? Well, you're not the only one. And that's why we here at StoryCounty.news have launched a brand new section of our website, From the Hawkeye of the Storm, which will feature our weekly podcast, Brada's Branded Thoughts, as well as other Hawkeye-related content for all you Story County residents who bleed black and gold, or if you live in Western Iowa, Eastern Iowa, or somewhere else other than Ames and you're a Hawkeye fan, we'd love your support. All of our content is free, so again, give our Facebook page a follow, give it a like, and give our Twitter page a follow as well, at From the Hawkeye on Twitter. The more likes, the more follows, the more support we get, the more content we can continue to push out, and it's all free. It's From the Hawkeye of the Storm, hosted by StoryCounty.news, for the best Hawkeye content in the area. This is week 163 of Brada's Branded Thoughts from the Hawkeye of the Storm. I'm Corey Brada. We're joined by a former Hawkeye. Everybody knows who he is, a multi All-Big Ten player. I want to say four-time All-Big Ten player. Is that right, Jovon?
Yeah.
We've got Jovon Johnson here, and a guy who, I tell you, your story, I want to talk a little bit about how you had to kind of overcome the odds. You know, everybody wanted to talk about your height and how you were undersized, and you sort of just proved everybody wrong throughout your career, and now you're doing the same. Before we started recording, we were talking about how you kind of overcome the odds and already are a defensive coordinator at a major college. So let's first of all talk about what you've been doing in the past 15, 16 years since you've been at Iowa. I know you made a huge name for yourself in the CFL. Talk a little bit about your post-Iowa career.
Once I left Iowa, I kind of dealt with a lot of the things that I dealt with in the recruiting world. Is he big enough? Is he strong enough? Is he fast enough? All these different question marks because of my size. And one thing I'm a firm believer in, size doesn't make the player. It doesn't matter how big you are, how fast you are. If you play the game how it's supposed to be played and you study and you're a student of the game, you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish. And post Iowa, I had the opportunity to play in the NFL. For whatever reason, it didn't work out as long as I would have liked. Again, the politics of the game, is something that you just can't control. I can't control that I'm not 6 foot. I can't control that I didn't run a 4.2. I tried. That's all I can say about that. But when it came to being a football player, I was bar none, one of the best on the team, and made plays every day, overcame adversity every day, bit my tongue, played my role, and did my part. And then it just didn't work out. Ended up getting this opportunity to play in Canada. Ended up going up there my first season up in CFL. We won the Grey Cup. I was on a fantastic football team. Guys that believed in each other, guys that played for each other. And that was the best part about it. And play with some guys that are either in the Hall of Fame or gonna be in the Hall of Fame. And learned a lot from those guys. I was a young player coming in, didn't have the right attitude. I thought everybody was against me, because I was the new guy on the block. And, that was just me being the ultimate competitor. I never wanted to ever ride the bench or play behind anybody because I always thought that I was the best player on the field. And then, I had to learn my lesson. I learned the hard way. Ended up that first year winning the Grey Cup, being on practice roster for the final game. So I was able to get picked up. I got picked up by Winnipeg going into 2008. And that's when I really started to make a name for myself. That was really my first real full-time go at it, playing the defensive back position in the CFL. Ended that season, 4 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, played every spot in the secondary at a high level. Everybody was able to see my versatility. I returned kicks. I kind of did a lot of the same things that I did at Iowa. And everything started to kind of play itself out. Going into 2009, everybody had high hopes with the team that we had coming back. Offensively, we struggled, but defensively, we had guys that were making plays all over the field. And that was my first year as an all-CFL player. I led the league in interceptions, in punt returns. I had probably one of my best years in punt return. And then from that day forward, I ended up becoming the highest paid defensive back in the CFL for over about a course of 7-8 years. And it was just being consistent every day. I never cheated a game. I never took a day off. I never, allowed myself to be subpar. I always was at the top of my game. And that was the reason why I was able to stick it out for so long. But I had some outstanding teammates. 2010, a lot of people don't know this, but in 2008, my little brother was murdered. So question whether or not I was really into playing football still, and if I wanted to, be home with my family, and because that was a tough pill to swallow. My mom only had 2 kids, me and my brother. So we grew up together. We did all types of things together. So it was one of those moments where I had to make a decision, and I felt the decision was easy because my mom, she's seen the frustration in me when it happened, and she knew that football was something that I was passionate about, and she wanted me to go be around my teammates so I could be around it more in a more positive environment. So that kind of helped me and put a chip on my shoulder to make sure that I went out every day and played every game like it could be my last. So going into 2010, my brother passed in 08. So 09 was my first breakout year. 2010 had another incredible season, but our team, we went 4-14. We lost 9 games by less than 3 points. So, we had the makings of a very good football team, but we didn't, reach our potential in that year. That same season, I felt like I had a year that I could have been defensive player of the year, but we just didn't win the games. And then in 2011, with the same guys, we went 14-4. Same guys, same everything, and the turnaround was major just because we played for each other. We won those tough games instead of losing them. We learned how to win together, learned how to play off of each other, and in 2011, I won the Defensive Player of the Year award, the first defensive back in the history of the league. And I'm still, to this day, the only defensive back to ever win it. And if that goes on for a lot longer than it should, I might be the only DB in the history going forward. Who knows? But had some incredible years, multiple all-star appearances, multiple great teammates, and been on great teams. Same kind of story. Once I left Winnipeg, I went over to Ottawa, which was a franchise coming back into the league, had been going for a while. And we went 2-16. And then the following year, we went to the Grey Cup. So, it was just, being an outstanding teammate, a guy that people could rely on, teaching a lot of the young players the ins and outs and the nuances of playing DB in the CFL, which is a lot different than playing in America. The field's bigger, the rules are different. The field goal posts are in the front of the end zone. So you got to be cautious of where you are on the field. The end zones are 20 yards. So if you got the ball at the 1 yard line, they still have an open playbook as to what routes they can run on you. So you can't get comfortable or complacent when the ball is down at the 1. So, but it's a lot of different things that you got to kind of adjust to. So I had a lot of young players that I played with that had to bring them along. That's probably a lot of the reasons why, we started most of these years. The first year we'd be good, but we wouldn't be as good as we could be. And then the following year, we'd have the same guys and we'd be outstanding. It's just, learning and mentoring and just bringing guys along. Because I was once one of those young guys, had to do the same things myself. So I had to learn from the older guys to show me the way up there, because the rules and stuff are different. But later in my career, a lot of the young guys always ask me, how am I able to still compete at such a high level? And the reason why I always told them was because, for one, I always take care of my body. For two, I would much rather study football, think football, play football, rather than go out and party every weekend and every night. A lot of guys lose years on their careers because they spend more time drinking, hanging out, not really committed to the game. And I was always committed to it. So, it was a blessing to be able to play for 13 years professionally. That's crazy to say. Since I left Iowa, honestly, I've been playing professionally till 2019. 2018 was my last year. 2019, I retired and went into coaching. But I knew I was destined to be a coach just because of, my leadership on the field, being a mentor to so many young guys and teaching them the nuances and different tricks that I've learned throughout playing at Iowa, playing in the NFL, all the different great coaches that I've had over the years, to send that legacy to some other young guys so that they can go on and become perennial all-stars in the CFL is something that I can hang my hat on and say, I knew coaching was in my blood, but it was just a matter of getting the opportunity.
And so talk a little bit, I know we discussed it before we started recording here, but talk a little bit about how this opportunity at Defiance, I guess before we do that, talk about Defiance. Where is that located? Where and what level are you competing at?
Defiance College is located in Northwest Ohio, about 30 minutes south of Toledo. We compete in the Division III, football world, and then we play in the HCAC, which is the Heartland Athletic Conference. Really good teams. We're about 2 hours north of Columbus, so we kind of right in the pocket. But we got a really young team. A lot of young players. When I first came here in 2019, we had 19 players in the spring. So we didn't even have enough to have spring football practice or anything. But currently we have about 105 players. So big turnaround. So majority of our players are freshmen and sophomores. So it's definitely, we had our share of growing pains, but we've progressed throughout the last year, having to be able to practice in the fall, this past fall, and then play in the spring, allowed our freshmen to truly develop and learn. So it made us a lot better football team than we probably would have been if we just played in the fall and those guys would have just been thrown in the fire. So it allowed us to do a lot of different things. But we are up and coming, and it's definitely something to look forward to. I think the fall season is going to be a breakout season for this group of guys. Like a lot like my career and most of my years of playing football. We had that one good year where we was good, but we were just like at that tipping point where, it's ready to explode. So I think going into the fall, bring in a couple freshman guys that are going to help us provide some depth and just continue to grow and learn. And, guys understand now that they are able to win those close football games. And I think that's going to be the thing that helps us get over the edge.
And we talked about overcoming the odds, and you talked about some of the parallels that you dealt with leaving Iowa and trying to make it in the NFL as in addition to trying to make it to Iowa, leaving high school and the recruiting struggles. What has that done to you? I mean, those challenges that you've had to overcome, has that put a chip on your shoulder? Has that humbled you? Because, we always hear about people who overcome the odds and they have a chip on their shoulder and they just ride the rest of their career with that chip on their shoulder. And that's what motivates them to keep going. What has been the motivation for you?
For me, I've always had a chip on my shoulder, even far before, playing at Iowa or even getting a scholarship to go to Iowa. I had a chip on my shoulder because, one thing about me, I grew up in a rough environment where competition was at a premium. Like you had to, come to compete every day, no matter what we did, whether we played kickball, dodgeball, baseball, softball, whatever the heck it was, it was constant competition. So in order for you to be the best, you had to compete and be one of the better players out there. And I've seen a lot of guys that were probably better football players than me that just never had the opportunity to make it because, off the field things that they did. So it kind of shaped the path for me, but I always had that chip on my shoulder because I was always the smallest, always the feisty guy, always having to prove myself. So it was nothing for me to have that chip when it was time for me to prove myself at Iowa or at any other level of my career. That chip still remains, and it started from childhood and it remains to today. But one thing about my professional career, definitely a humbling experience because I learned a lot about myself. I learned that, it's one thing to have a chip and be competitive, but it's also one thing to be able to respect the guys that you play with because they are there for a reason. And, those guys are outstanding players. And, I learned that being the ultimate teammate will help you win a lot more than your ego will allow. So, I was able to put my pride aside and focus more on the team aspect, which, made us better. It made us better as a whole. That's probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned from playing is that, it's not about you. It's about the team. And if you can put the team above yourself, then a lot of good things are going to happen. So, and that's exactly what happened throughout my career. A lot of good things happen, not only for me, but for the team. But, because of my teammates, I was able to have the success that I had.
People look at you if they're watching this on Zoom. You're cut like a running back. I mean, you don't look like a defensive back. So, did you play running back? And you had to have played running back in high school.
I played quarterback in high school.
You played okay. So, talk about that. What sort of a transition was that like? I mean, going from Q. I'm assuming you played defensive back as well, but I mean, what was that like going to? I mean, playing at that size in college. And you're from Erie, Pennsylvania, right? Originally. So just talk about that transition. That's a two different worlds, I assume.
Well, I think it's one and the same. For me, playing quarterback made me a better defensive back because of the way it all works. As a quarterback, every day, warming up, throwing balls, doing all that whole 9 yards. I know where routes are going to break at because I threw them. So if I'm throwing the ball to a guy that's breaking on a slant route or hitching up on a hitch route, running a curl post, I know where all these things are going to happen.
Right.
So when I go play corner, I anticipate a lot because in my head, I'm already calculating, okay, if is he breaking at 5? No. Okay, now is he breaking at 12? No, or I already have the mental capacity as to where they're going to break at. So 9 times out of 10, when I guess or anticipate something, it's happening when I'm anticipating it. So I was able to, jump on a lot of routes throughout my career, pro, college, whatever, because in high school I had a lot of interceptions. So the same thing translated to college. I had a lot of interceptions. Pro, I had a lot of interceptions, but that was probably testament to me playing quarterback. So I kind of, was able to relate how the routes are run and when they were going to happen to, playing quarterback from the defensive back standpoint.
Did guys try to scheme against you? I mean, I was so young. I'll just be honest. I was so young when you were at Iowa, and my memories of Iowa in the early 2000s is so blurry. But did people scheme as far as, we're going to try to schematically get our tallest, biggest wide receiver against Johnson out wide? I mean, how did that work, and did that happen in the pros as well?
I mean, I don't think that teams actually scheme that way because Antoine Allen wasn't much bigger than me. So, I mean, both of our corners were, I mean, I'm 5'9", Antoine's probably 5'10".
Yeah.
So, you know, if they scheme to try to get their bigger receivers matched up on me, that probably was the biggest mistake they could have ever made, because I was more of the take the ball away type of corner, and Antoine was more of the cover you up, big tackler type of guy. So,
Yeah.
you know, you could pick your poison, whatever matchup you wanted. But, you know, I was confident in my ability that it didn't matter if you were 6'4" or 5'10", I was still going to lock you down. And that's just the way I played the game. I didn't care, you know, whether it was Braylon Edwards or freaking Santonio Holmes. Like, I played them all the same. Like, they were going to get my best, and that was just the way it was going to be.
All right, I'm going to jump kind of all over the place. Favorite defensive back under Phil Parker at Iowa? Now, and you can't say yourself, of course. Favorite defensive back through 2020.
Defensive back, as in just overall defensive back?
Let's go corner first.
Okay, corner. I'm gonna go with Desmond King.
Okay, I had a feeling you were going to say Desmond. A little bit undersized himself, right? And
yeah, he reminded me a lot of myself.
Yeah, ball hawk.
Yeah.
So, favorite defensive back overall? Is there a different answer, or would you still go Des?
Yeah, favorite defensive back overall, I'm gonna go with Bob Sanders.
Yeah, I can see why you preface that answer. So, so as far as what you see this year, I mean, coming out of the spring, I know you were at the spring game this past a week and a half ago now, and all the talk has been about this defensive back core. It seems like it's a very strong group. Riley Moss has really stepped up. Matt Hankins was out much of spring. I know, I believe you have a relationship with Terry Roberts. Is that right? Because he's from Erie as well. And then you've got guys like Jamari Harris and Sebastian Castro. What did you see this spring, and what's your outlook as far as, I mean, you've seen all the different years of Phil Parker groups. I mean, what does this team look like to you?
I think now a lot of those guys are growing up. They're maturing. And I think they're going to have a breakout year. I like where Riley is right now. Although he was the only defensive back of the starting four that was out there, I like where he is mentally. I like where he is physically. He's playing well, and I'm looking forward to him having a good year. You know, minus the injuries to the other guys. You know, Kaevon Merriweather is playing outstanding. He reminds me of a young Bob Sanders. I know that's a high praise, but he's built for playing the strong safety position, and he's freaky athletic. It's just a matter of him being able to come into his own. You know, one thing about Bob was just a physical specimen. He was from birth, I think he was built that way. But you know, even when he played Little League, he played like that. He always played like that. Physical. He played running back, safety. You know, would always come down and knock people out. And that was just the way he played. But Merriweather, I think, has a little bit more athletic ability in regards to the coverage side, not so much in the tackling category, but he's a good tackler as well. So he kind of has some shades of Bob in him. Who plays the free safety spot is still up in the air. To me, I'm not really sure. Unless they move Dane back to free, is that spot's kind of questionable for me. The corner spots, I think, are going to be really good, no matter who you put out there at the other corner, whether it's Matt Hankins or Terry Roberts. Both of them are really good players. They're going to be really good. And then, you know, they do the nickel stuff where they bring in what they call the cash. So. Yeah. Then you know, you can bring in a Terry Roberts if he's not playing right away, or you can bring in whoever that third corner is and play him as the cash guy, or you can even drop Belton down to the cash spot and bring in another guy to put in that free. I mean, it all depends. He has some flexibility, and that's a good problem to have as a coach is have guys that you can trust that you can put on the field and not skip a beat no matter who's out there. And I think that's the good problem to have. And that's where they're going to be going into the season.
So I want to talk to you about your relationship with, first of all, Norm Parker. What did you I mean, he's going to be down as a legend in Iowa lore, but what was your relationship like with Coach Norm Parker?
Man, he was like a father figure. Like, Norm, he ride around on the golf cart, making sure everybody's, giving their best effort. He was a big critic on effort. And he always said, you can't coach effort. You either want to do it or you don't. And like the team that we had, we were built on the culture at Iowa. And I think that culture came from Norm, just the way he was built, the way he attacked it every day and the way he'd get after our ass when we weren't playing well. We developed that culture from him, and it kind of stuck throughout the program for many, many years. And no matter what, even the younger guys that came in that never had the opportunity to meet him, they understood that the culture was what it was because it was built on a foundation from the players before them. But a lot of them never met Norm. But the guys that knew Norm knew that culture was built because of Norm Parker. And that's why the Iowa football program, although Ferentz and the offensive staff are outstanding as well, but Iowa is built on defensive football. And, that's just the way it was. And that's a testament to Norm.
What about Phil? What was your relationship like with Phil?
I love Phil to death. One thing about Phil, he always tell you everything that you don't want to hear. And as a player, oftentimes, a lot of the young guys don't know how to take that. They don't know how to accept the fact that even when you make a play, you do something wrong, he's going to let you know about it.
Yeah.
And that type of challenge on a regular basis is what makes the corners and DBs at Iowa so good over the years. When you think about all the guys, the ones before me, the ones after me, the ones that played with me, all the really good defensive backs, they all have a lot of things in common. And I think we're all built by Phil Parker. And you could tell that our technique is always on point. There are going to be guys, some of them are big tacklers. Some of them are guys that take the ball away. But coverage wise, they're all going to be really good. They go to the next level and they're still really good for a reason. But one thing he's big on is eliminating the little mistakes and making sure that your technique is always the best part of your game, because he says everybody has athletic ability. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at that level. If you weren't athletic enough, you wouldn't be there. But the guys that can separate themselves are the ones that play with outstanding technique and then let their athletic ability take over when you need it. But muscle memory is a big thing. So, my first 2 years, I hated him, and he was on me all the time. Even the first 2 years, I had 10 interceptions, and he still was on me about the little things. And then my junior and senior year, he kind of laid off, and I thought he didn't like me anymore. But it was just him telling me. He said, "If you make a mistake, I know one thing for sure. You already know you made it before I even tell you. So There's no need for me to keep harping on it because you made the mistake."
What was it like for you personally last summer with just everything that happened with the Iowa program? I mean, there was so much. I don't want to say division, but unfortunately, there was division. Did that surprise you? What came out with Iowa football?
Yeah, I was kind of torn because I would have never saw it coming.
Okay.
But at the same time, I can't say, how another player felt.
Yeah.
During whatever the incidents may have been that they had occur. I personally had mixed emotions about it because I didn't deal with any of that. Okay. So it was definitely a shock to me to hear that things like that were going on, or if they truly have. I have no idea. All I can go by is who says what, and and that's the only thing we really have, because there's no true proof or something that we can stand on in regards to it. So I'm gonna take the word of the people saying it, and I'm also still gonna back the Iowa coaching staff, because I feel like they treated me with nothing but the utmost respect, and I never had any incidents, racial or indifferent, because of anything that had to do with the color of my skin while I was involved in the program. So, I had mixed emotions on that whole front when it came out.
What's the first thing that pops in your mind when I say Chris Doyle?
Outstanding strength and conditioning coach.
So never ever felt profiled or demeaned by Chris Doyle?
Never. Absolutely not. I never had any incidences with Coach Doyle where he didn't challenge me in the same way that he challenged everybody else. Never. I never had any, incidences where I've ever seen with my own two eyes that were racially profiled or any. I've never seen it. So to say that, he did it is kind of, again, a shocker to me, because I never seen it before.
What about Kirk Ferentz, or as I know the players often call him, KF? What was your I mean, we had Clinton Solomon on last fall, and we were talking to him about the same issue, and I'm sure I don't know, do you keep in contact with Clinton at all?
Yeah, we still boys, yeah.
So he basically said, you're not really that close to the head coach. So was that sort of your feeling as well, or was Kirk a little bit closer to defensive players, maybe more so than he was the wide receiver group?
I mean, I think with Kirk, he's the ultimate player's coach, but at the same time, as a head coach, you got to kind of build with everybody. You can't really give favoritism to a particular player. So sure. I think everybody's going to feel a little bit of distance from the head coach, because he's basically trying to make sure everybody's on the same page and doing what they're supposed to do. The offensive linemen are always going to be closer to Kirk than anybody else, because he directly coaches them. He's on their ass all the time, coaching them to be outstanding players. Whereas defensively, we don't really have that many run-ins with Coach Ferentz, and unless you have to go see him for something, or you hear him talk after practice and things like that, or after games. But you never really kind of have that type of player-coach relationship with the head coach like we do with like Phil and Norm.
Yeah. So as far as it relates to Kirk Ferentz, do you, and I don't want to stay on this subject past this question, but do you believe there's any chance that Kirk has a prejudicial bone in his body?
I really can't say for sure, because I don't know, because I've never seen it. I've never felt any racial prejudice come from anybody on the coaching staff in my 4 years at the University of Iowa. Does it happen? Who knows? I know a lot of guys that, came out about that whole racial prejudice thing. Because they always said, oh, Phil Parker, he loves to play a white player in the secondary. But that doesn't mean anything. I think a lot of times some guys have that stigma that because they're a high recruit or they're highly recruited, that they're just going to go and they're going to play. And that's not always the case. When you think about like guys like Chris Smith and Jeremiah Roberts, these guys were, bigger recruits than what Iowa probably was going to get back at the time. But Sean Constantine and Derek Pagel started over them.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that both of those guys were better players than those two guys. They might have been more athletic, but they were better players. They knew what to do. They knew what their assignments were. They did everything right, and they made plays. And they both got drafted to the NFL for a reason. But I think a lot of that comes from that type of stigma, like because a white safety plays or a white corner plays. Like Riley Moss, he's another guy that a lot of people are thinking that Phil is only putting him on the field because he's white and he plays corner and he's athletic.
He's about the only white. He's the only white corner that I've seen at Iowa in my life. I mean, that was a starter.
Better. He's better. He's the best corner that he has right now.
Yeah, in
my estimation. And I've played for a long time, seen a lot of players play the position of corner. He's the best corner on the team right now. Wow. So who's to say that he shouldn't be playing like that? Yeah. That's the stigma that people get when they think about Iowa football and they think about, different guys that have come through the program that, for whatever reason didn't get the due diligence that they felt they should have gotten. So that's probably where that comes from.
Was there a culture shock for you when you moved to Iowa City?
Not necessarily. I mean, I grew up in a rough environment. Granted, I was always around a lot more people that look like me, but I went to Mercer's Prep, where I was one of 4 Black kids that went to school there. So every day I was in an environment that I wasn't used to. So It wasn't a culture shock for me to go to Iowa and be in that environment. It wasn't at all.
I can tell you from my personal experience and from people who are close to me, being a white male who's lived in Iowa my whole life. And again, I'm speaking for a lot of, I think, white, maybe younger males. I can't speak for the opposite sex, but people who grew up around here, those claims coming out last year were an absolute shock to people here. But it does, I think it has opened people's eyes to the fact that helping someone acclimate to a different environment maybe was something that wasn't being done to the best of, the whether it be the coaching staff's ability or the university's ability. Do you find that to be, now that you're on the other side of things as a coach, I know you're close to Columbus, but do you see that with your players where some are from an environment and they get to college and it's just a total 180 for them and you have to sort of to help them acclimate?
Yeah, that's a big part of coaching is that acclimation period. A lot of guys, especially at this level, you lose a lot of players that end up going back home because they're not used to being in an environment like this.
Right.
So, you have to, as a coach, get them acclimated by, trying to help them adjust to what they're dealing with. One thing about college, and, you learn this as a player, is that every day you're going to deal with some sort of adversity. And that adversity is going to make you stronger. And that's going to help you, create those everlasting memories, because you're going to look back at things and you're going to say to yourself, man, like I remember when I was getting ready to give up on this opportunity that I had in front of me, but instead I stuck it out, and you're going to create friendships that's going to last forever. You're going to create memories that's going to last forever. And then hopefully you win a lot of football games and those memories will last forever as well. So, you definitely got to work with, players when they come from different environments and, try to help them adjust to the different culture.
How much conversation have you had with Terry Roberts?
I talk to him often, because I've mentored him since he was 9 years old.
Okay. All right.
So I've trained him. It's no coincidence he's at Iowa, because he only had one scholarship to D1, and it was to Iowa, because I've taught him all of the trades of Phil Parker since he was 9 years old. So he looks like an Iowa defensive back, and he plays like an Iowa defensive back. So, he's been drilled. All of the drills that they do, he's done since he was 9. So, but I do talk to him often. One thing about him, they didn't feel they could trust him earlier in his career because he was getting in trouble a lot, and that was on him. It wasn't on the staff. It wasn't on anybody but him.
Right.
And he has to look in the mirror and face those mistakes that he made, because he cost himself a lot of time playing. But now he's coming into his own. You know, he was a young guy. He was a young player, first time away from home. You know, being in college, being free, no parents around. You know, he had to kind of go through that acclimation period of adjusting to, you know, what was in front of him. And then once he started to see the bigger picture, he started to settle down and come into his own. And now he's playing at a high level, and they've praised him over the last few months of where he is and what they see in him. So, you know, I'm proud of him, and I'm happy that he's sticking it out.
Absolutely. And I can just say from my personal opinion, guys like Terry Roberts, and again, we have not seen him as a really a regular rotational player on defense, but certainly he's made a huge impact on special teams. But guys like Terry Roberts, I don't know if you remember Devontae Young a couple of years back and what he did on special teams, transitioning from wide receiver, guys like that who stick with the program through obvious, got to be personal struggles. And again, I wasn't aware of Terry's trouble off the field, but just the fact that he has been so impressive over, you know, the course of his career on special teams. Matt Hankins announces he's coming back. That could be an opportunity for Terry where he may have been saying, I don't know if this was happening behind the scenes, but he could have said, hey, I need to look at going somewhere else. I'm not getting my shot here. Mm-hmm. And he has stuck it out. So what does that say about his character? It seems like this is his time, but you know, he's really having to bide his time.
Yeah, and we had conversations about that. You know, he wasn't happy at one point, and you know, I be on him all the time. One thing, we do have a hell of a relationship, and his dad and I have a very good relationship, and they reach out to me a lot in regards to him and being at Iowa. You know, just some of the things that he might be facing and dealing with, and we have conversations a lot. And I did tell him, you know, if he felt like he wasn't going to get a fair opportunity, then he had to do what was in his best interest. But I did tell him, you have to, again, look in the mirror at why you didn't play earlier in your career. It wasn't because of the coaching staff. So, you know, now that, you know, and he had some pretty good players in front of him. You know, Josh Jackson was there. You know, you had, you know, these guys. So you had some really good players. But, you know, it was, and then you had Ojemudia, who now with the Broncos. So he had some good players in front of him. So he had to wait his turn. So he had to find a way. And one thing I always tell young players, if you're not starting on offense or defense, you have to make an impact on special teams, because if you're not on the field at all, the coaches can't notice you. Yeah. But if you're making an impact in different ways, special teams, kickoff, punt, whatever the case may be, then you get noticed for every play you make when you're out there. And Terry did a hell of a job of, you know, making plays as a gunner on punt, on kickoff, being the first one down the field, different things that I see when I'm just watching it on TV. But, you know, I know that the coaches see it. They know that he's going to be one of their best special teams returners every year. And then when he gets his opportunity to play on defense, he's gonna make sure that he never gets off the field again. And that's what I tell him all the time. When you get the opportunity, you make sure the backup never sees the field again.
And I know he had the big play against Northwestern last year on special teams, but how big of a moment will the Iowa State recovery and Jack Trice be for Terry when he gets older?
I mean, it's probably gonna forever be one of those moments that he remembers. You know, him, the guys that he plays with, you know, because beating Iowa State is an unforgettable moment. No matter if you beat them once, twice, 3 times, or 4, it's always a moment that you never forget. Because I never forget when Seneca Wallace came back and beat us when I was a freshman, and I'll never forget it. But you know, that's just an unforgettable moment to beat Iowa State, and it was being because of a play you made. Unforgettable. Never forget it.
And to beat him here in Ames, that's the kicker on all of it. So, all right, before we let you go, Jovon, I do want to talk a little bit about the rest of this team. I'll call you a former quarterback. You are a former quarterback. So, and certainly you, I know you're biased towards this coaching staff, and rightfully so. But what do you see out of Spencer Petras? Has he made the strides? Because I think anybody and everybody, including the coaching staff, will agree that early on last year he didn't really seem ready for the moment. Certainly seemed to adjust as the season went on, but I'll be honest, personally, spring looked okay from my perspective for Spencer. What do you see from him? Is he the guy, or do you see maybe the coaching staff mixing things up? It's not really a Kirk thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, is he the guy? I mean, I think that's still up in the air. I think training camp is going to be the telltale of things. But can he be the guy? Absolutely. He has the tools. He has the size. He has the arm. It's just a matter of him being better with his decision making. And, that's part of it. Being a quarterback, all eyes are on you. So the pressure is always going to be on you. So you got to be able to perform under pressure, be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And, when you come in behind quarterbacks that have went on from Iowa to play in the NFL, you got big shoes to fill. And, he was a young player. He was what? I don't even know. He was a sophomore.
Yeah, well, this is his first spring. So
he really hasn't really had game reps to be ready. Yeah. He was just kind of thrown into the fire this past or in the fall. So hopefully he takes the strides, makes the necessary adjustments to his game to make him, get over the hump. But I think if they stick it out with him, and if he's not playing well and they stick it out with him, it's gonna be something that fans are gonna be able to see. They're gonna be able to see, them putting their marbles all in one basket. Because if you want to win, you got to go with somebody else if the starter's not playing well, and we'll see.
Brian Ferentz, what were your thoughts? I mean, I'm sure you knew Brian, right? When did Brian play? Were you guys at Iowa at the same time?
Yeah, we played together. Yeah.
So I won't quote exactly what Clinton said about Brian. He wasn't trying to take a shot at Brian, but didn't have the highest opinion of Brian. So what are your thoughts on Brian Ferentz? Not from a coaching perspective, from a personal perspective.
It took some time. It took some. Like my years at Iowa, Brian was one of those players that always had a nasty attitude, and so it took some time, probably even far after, I got done playing, for me to respect Brian and what he stood for. But, after, playing with him and stuff like that, knowing what he's about, it was just a transition period to be able to respect him, because I knew playing what type of guy he was, but I don't know how he is as a coach. I just know, that he's in position to possibly be the next head coach at Iowa if Kirk wanted to shut it down anytime soon.
Do you think that's still a possibility given the situation last year? And of course, his name was mixed in with some of these right or wrong, the allegations, but do you think that's still in the works?
I really don't. I don't know. Again, the allegations and all of those things have to work themselves out. I really can't really speak on that aspect. But I definitely think he's gonna probably be the head coach in waiting if Kirk was to shut it down within the next 2 years. I think he'd probably take over as the head coach, because I'm sure he has a great relationship with Gary.
Sure.
So if his dad has a great relationship with him, you can only imagine that, the son would.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I have some thoughts on that. But so obviously Brian's leading this offense. We talked about Spencer. The O-line seems like, again, losing some pieces with Alaric Jackson specifically. And you lose Kallenberger and you lose a couple other guys. But Tyler Linderbaum's a stud at center. And they've got pieces. They seem to, recent years on both sides of the line, between Kelvin Bell and Tim Polasek, and of course now George Barnett, they seem to really value having a load of guys to where you suffer injuries, you're able to just plug and play. What are your thoughts on Tyler Goodson, though? Guy could be potentially the first, the first Doak Walker Award candidate since Sean Green. What do you see in Tyler?
I think he's a hell of a player. He's going to be the engine that makes that offense go. I see a lot of successful running backs that have came through the Iowa program. I see him being the next one in line. He's that good. He does a lot of the little things right. I think Liddell is going to help him to be able to accomplish what he set out to accomplish for himself. When you got a guy who played at a high level as a player that's coaching you and telling you the ins and outs of playing the position, it's only going to make him better. And I could see him being one of the best running backs in the Big Ten this upcoming season.
The duo here in the state of Iowa is pretty exceptional. So obviously Iowa fans would rather see Goodson excel, but Cyhawk rivalry. What are your thoughts? The big game in September. Iowa State projected to be maybe top 10 this year with a load of talent. A lot of guys that exercised that extra year because of COVID to come back. What are your thoughts on the Cyhawk rivalry this game? I know you're going to pick Iowa, but
yeah, I don't care who they got coming back. I don't think they're going to win. Where's the game at?
It's in Ames. It's your names.
Oh, I guess it'll be a tough one. It's always tough to go to Ames, but I think it's two good football teams, to say the least. Two really good football teams that are going to be well coached, and they both play in tough conferences. But if I had to choose, I'm always going to pick Iowa. I'll never pick Iowa State to win.
And you tell Terry he better become the starter by week 2, because they need him to make that same play, or they need to make a play. If he's on special team, if it's on special teams or it's at corner, he needs to make the game sealing play in that game. So we look forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, it was really good talking to you, Jovon. And if you didn't have a regular job, we'd have you on more often. But congratulations on the position. I mean, it's impressive that you've been able to pay. You've certainly paid your dues over the course of obviously high school, college, and in a CFL. So best wishes to you and your family. I hope you guys are staying safe. Have you guys been able to fare pretty well during COVID?
Oh yeah. Haven't came down with it at all. So knock on wood, it stays the same.
Knock on wood. Yep. It's the same for all of us. Well, we appreciate it, and we wish your family and your team all the best, and we'll hopefully get a chance to have you on again sometime.
All righty, no problem. Just let me know.
All right, this is from the Hawkeye of the Storm with Jovon Johnson, week 163 of Brada Thoughts. We'll talk to you soon.